Australians of Reddit, what is the scariest encounter you've had with one of the native animals? I had just come home after a long bicycle ride. I took my shoes off and just forgot to bring them inside afterwards. 2 days later I was about to go on another bicycle ride, so needed my shoes. I put my left one on with no problems, but felt something a little squishy when putting my foot into my right shoe. I immediately took my foot out to discover it to be covered in at least 100 baby spiders, and a larger redback spider came scuttling out of the shoe. Don't leave your shoes outside, or at the very least check them, unlike me. I was driving on a straight unsealed road through barren land and had not seen anything on the road or to either side for about half an hour when I had to decelerate heavily to avoid driving into a group of half a dozen emus who were startled and who scattered in all directions. While I was mowing, saw a snake, thought it was a red-bellied black snake, get them all the time, so I took a stick and hit the ground near it to scare it off. Fucking thing arsed up, hissed and charged at me. I took off. It was a tiger snake. Came home from work and went to step outside to enjoy the garden when I noticed an intense buzzing. I looked down and there's a spider wasp and a huntsman spider having a Godzilla King of the Monsters showdown, wrestling all over the patio area. The spider wasp stung the huntsman into submission and dragged it over to a hole in the wall. I later learned that the spider wasp lays her eggs in the barely living body and uses it as an incubator. Nice. In another huntsman incident, the one I keep in my garage dropped into my lap from the sun visor in my car as I reversed out of my driveway. I screamed for a bit before scooping him up and popping him back in the garage. I warned him not to get in my car again. Anyone watching would have found a grown man lecturing a fucking huge spider a bit weird. I do generally like them though, hence not killing it. I've also been chased by an emu while cycling a few times. They're fucking deranged. Lived in the outback. Was just minding my own business walking past the local cinema and a 6 feet emu came running out from behind a tree and nearly knocked me down. Scared the absolute crap out of me. Follow-up emus were not supposed to be in the township, there was a fence to keep them out, so town services had to forcibly evict it. They achieved this by driving up close to it, throwing a noose around its neck, quickly winding up the windows, and slowly escorting it out of town. Bad idea. They are surprisingly strong and it kicked in the whole side of the vehicle in the process. Came home after 2 weeks away. My parents picked me up, unloaded my suitcase, loaded it up themselves, then left on holidays. That night, I was sleeping on my stomach and a possum came in through the window and landed on the soles of my feet. I'm guessing he had pushed through the fly screen while I was away and had been sleeping in my room. All I knew is something big and hairy landed on me. I lashed out and he went flying across the room. I left pretty quick and slept on the couch. Another one didn't scare me, but the wife. I saw 2 or 3 baby huntsman spiders about the size of a pinhead outside my bedroom. I saw maybe a dozen more in my bedroom. Then I walked into my ensuite. Huntsmans have about 200 babies at a time, and the remaining 185 were all in there hanging out. The wife made me go out at 11 p.m. for bug spray and still didn't sleep in the bedroom for another 4 nights. Went into my shed, no lights, only to find out it was full of redbacks with webs in every corner. Now I am not scared of spiders, but holy Christ, half a bloody dozen were crawling all over me. Lucky I had some friends that were more than happy to smack them off. About 5 years ago I was fully envenomated by a king brown while working on a remote mine site in the Pilbara, Washington. I had all sorts of side effects from the antivenom, including blindness. It took 2 years to fully recover. A leech attached itself to the middle of my eyeball while I was hiking in the rainforest. My friends wanted to piss on it or light a match over it, but neither solution seemed ideal. So I waited while it wiggled about, filled up with blood, and finally dropped off an hour later. The following week I went on a date with one of the guys I met on that hike, even though I still had a zombie eye from the leech bite. 10 years on, last year, he and I went back to the place where he first looked me in the eye with that leech wiggling about, and we were married in the rainforest with our friends standing by. My mother-in-law called me over to her house because she thought her cat had been bitten by a brown snake. She asked me to bring a shovel. I drove over and found the snake in the backyard. I whacked the thing as hard as I could 10 times with the flat side of the shovel. The snake reared up a couple times until it slumped into a heap, bleeding. I put the snake in a plastic bag and tied it shut. I placed it between my legs while wife drove to the vet to get the cat checked out. I brought the snake so the vet could identify if it was a brown snake. When we arrived, the vet had just completed surgery on a dog and laid the dog on the floor. They opened the bag and the snake slithered off the table onto the floor and started moving toward the dog. A nurse covered the snake with a box and got a hammer. She later smashed its head with the hammer. I seriously couldn't believe it was still alive after the beating I gave it. Now I know I should have hit it with the edge of the shovel, cutting its head. Edit. Yes, it was a brown snake. And yes, both the cat and dog were fine. Turns out the cat wasn't bitten after all. Also, knowing what I know now, I would not attempt to kill a brown snake anymore. I would call a professional to handle it. In bed, felt something scutter over my chest. Turned on the light. Saw nothing. Then as I went to turn the light off, saw a giant fucking huntsman crawl under the mattress. I was so tired that I left it, but it still freaks me the fuck out. I'm not from Australia but lived in Brisbane for a year while studying abroad. Was walking to the bars with a friend in the evening, quite dark out even on suburb city streets, so I pulled out my smartphone camera light. Just as I do so, I pan up to rustling in a nearby tree, and there is a giant bat on a tree that turns around and spreads its wings like it's Batman. We ran out of there damn fast. After that, along with spider webs, I no longer walk on sidewalks into the suburbs, even during the day. Okay. School canoeing camp out on the Murray River 6+ hours from civilization. Taking a shit in a hole in the dark. Loud thumping behind me getting closer and closer and closer. Fucking kangaroos just seeing what's up. Best shit I ever had. Walking through long grass like a moron with friends. Accosted by a large brown snake. Turns out I can run pretty fast. Dad clearing weeds out the back of my parents' house. Accosted by a large brown snake. Fastest I have ever seen Dad move. Neighbor knocks on our door. Tell us he just saw a large brown snake go into our yard. Dad goes to look. Accosted by a large brown snake. Neighbor runs it over as he is backing out the driveway. At friend's house. His dad starts getting excited. Accosted by a large brown snake on the front lawn. Kills it with a shovel in some stubby shorts and thongs. Way too casual about it. Largest, thickest snake I've seen in person to this day. Old boy just chopped it into 3 bits with a tiny shovel. Basically, you don't have to look far for a poisonous snake. My cat decided to bring a live baby snake into the house. Thanks, Bailey. I used to live in the country on a 4,000-acre farm, so it wasn't unusual that if go out riding and find somewhere new. Anyway, this one time, I'd saddled up my horse, told my foster family the direction I planned to take, and I was off. It was a pretty pleasant ride in summer, but it actually wasn't too hot, which isn't common in Australia. There's usually only 2 seasons in Australia, freeze your tits off or bloody oath it's hot, so finding the right balance at the right time is like winning the lottery. So there I was, plodding along on my horse when I come to a bunch of eucalyptus trees. They're not uncommon, but I hate the smell, which is why they're always so memorable. Anyway, I start to feel like I'm being watched, but I shrug thinking it's just a stray roo in the distance. I don't have the greatest eyesight, and at this point, I didn't have glasses, or maybe an echidna, because my horse was getting a little antsy. I do my best to calm her down, and we move on. The next few seconds felt like a lifetime. I felt something sharp in my back and added weight, and I obviously freaked out. What the hell had just happened? I try to look over my shoulder the best I can, and I'm greeted with the snarling toothy snarl of a drop bear. I do my best to grab at it while trying to keep in the saddle because, at this point, my horse knew what was going on, and she was going mad like a bronco. She threw both me and the bear, and thankfully, the thud from hitting the ground was enough to send it speeding away and back into the trees. Safe to say, I rode back home as fast as I could, but I still have the claw marks to this day exactly in the shape of the Southern Cross. Scariest day of my life. 3 dingoes rolled up on me and my sisters on Fraser Island. Dad chased them off with a big stick before they could do anything besides make all 3 of us shit ourselves. Being swooped by magpies and even plovers. They are very territorial and annoying as fuck. When they swoop, they don't generally hit you, but get close enough for you to hear them swoop next to your head. Was down at a lodge by a lake with some friends, and we brought one girl's two dogs, big dogs, Briards. Anyway, it was evening and the dogs start going crazy, so we look outside to see what's going, and there's a whole mob of kangaroos, like at least 15, all just standing in the trees near our little lodge. How but one of the dogs opened the gate, and they both went running after the roos. Fully chasing them, going wild, barking and shit. Me and my friends had to sprint after the kangaroos to try and get the dogs back. The dogs somehow cornered them but weren't moving no matter how much we called them, so we had to go up to the roos to get the dogs. Had a stare off with one of them, was shit scared full thought it was gonna punch me in the face. Bloody terrifying. Woke up in the middle of the night and walked half asleep into the kitchen for a drink. Turned the light on and am greeted by hundreds and hundreds of baby spiders, about the size of your pinky nail, on every surface of the kitchen. There were tiny webs like streamers cascading from the ceiling, and they were coming out of every crack and crevice like a fucking horror movie. I shut the kitchen door behind me to try and stop them infesting the rest of the house and sprayed the entire contents of the 4 cans of bug spray I had, both surface spray and flying insect spray. After the first can I had to keep exiting the room to breath, but I sprayed until I couldn't see anything moving anymore and then contemplated going to buy more spray. I had to throw out every item of food that wasn't sealed and wash the entire kitchen contents, including the walls where hundreds of little black dots made up the mass grave of baby spider carcasses. I'm not afraid of spiders, and it's common here to often find bugs inside. We have a lot of bugs, and our houses aren't generally sealed up very well, but damn, that was the stuff of nightmares. Still makes my skin crawl thinking about it. Hubby and a couple of mates were swimming in the dam in their jocks when someone yelled out crocodile, but it was an 8-foot black snake swimming out after them on top of the water. Hubby went back to the gum tree to get his clothes, and the black snake had curled up next to their pile of clothes. They walked about 2 miles back home in wet jocks, barefoot. The 3 of them went back on the tractor with a shotgun, but couldn't find the snake. He also reckons he saw a black panther in the bush, but I'm skeptical. I was sleeping in my bed and suddenly woke up for no reason. I looked around for a bit before noticing the largest huntsman spider I had ever seen in my life, clinging to the ceiling right over my head, and as soon as I saw it I panicked and leaped out of bed, and not 10 seconds later the spider had dropped down onto my pillow right where my head would have been. That incident literally gave me arachnophobia. I was bathing in a river when I saw a snake get into the water a few meters away. And it was coming towards me. And it could swim a lot better than I could. Now snakes are bad enough when you can run away, but can't really do that in this situation. So I pissed myself as the snake passed beside me and got out of the river on the other side. And then I decided swim time, and really all time in the bush, was over. I live in Sydney, so none, unless you count a shark alarm at Bondi Beach once, or include huntsman spiders deciding to be in the most inconvenient places, like chilling between my car door handle, in my letterbox, perched above my shower, etc. It's just inappropriate behavior on their half. I mean, I saw a snake once on holidays, but it was just a diamond snake, not one of the deadly ones. I caught a fish once while fishing down on the wharf on the Sapphire Coast. A kind of creature which, when plumbed from the depths, is an affront to God. Its existence was distressing. It was black. Blacker than the darkest black hole, dead pixels on a monitor, the darkest depths, and I cannot stress this enough. Black. It had eyes which bulged outward like black orbs of despair, no pupils, no iris, no reflection off the surface. Just an imposing black. The only exception was vertical stripes in its sides. Remembering it makes me cringe. The stripes were a matte, uranium, vomit, poison, zombie flesh decay green. Below its eyes it had a mouth which gaped as white as its body, and inside it was blacker than the darkest night. The final feature was its spines. They were 15 to 20 centimeters long and ran up from its back and flanks. These webbed spines were a centimeter thick. The webbing wasn't part of the fish though. The webbing was the translucent brown-black sludge with the consistency of Kentucky jelly which the fish was excreting over itself, probably a poisonous coating for the spines. Why is this scary? Because I spent 3 years afterwards trying to identify it. There was nothing on the internet or books. I went through local fishing guides, government publications on pests, all the literature, and nothing. I don't have a photo sadly, as this was 10 or 12 years ago. There are so many nasties in Australia, some aren't documented. PS any NSW fisherman with a potential ID please comment. Jesus Christ, thank you for triggering this wonderful childhood memory that I had joyfully buried deep into my subconscious until this moment. One of my childhood friends lived on a big farm in Washington, and we'd spend most of the holidays staying at her place doing whatever farm-related mischief 2 8-year-olds could get up to all day, then passing out like the dead. Anyway, one morning I woke up and she was sitting on the floor in the middle of the room staring at me. My immediate reaction was, "What the shit are you doing?" She pointed behind me at the biggest goddamn huntsman I had ever seen, a few inches from my head, just relaxing on the wall having a grand old time. I asked her why the fuck she didn't poke me and get me out of bed, and preferably to another planet, far away from that monstrosity, and she replied, "Because a minute ago it was on your face." Driving on the freeway one night and I suddenly noticed this huge huntsman spider walking along the dashboard, very slowly making his way closer and closer to me. He was really big too, size of my hand. I'm not bothered by huntsmen, they're not venomous. But I didn't want it crawling out of sight and then coming up my leg, so I needed to get him out of the car. I should have pulled over, but I figured he'd just hide, so I rolled my window down, waited for him to get close, and then somehow scooped him out the window. The most dangerous thing about it was that I was doing 100 kilometers per hour while swatting at a big hairy spider. Got another spider story. I had to open my rarely used garage door and was just about to reach under for the latch when I had a rare moment of caution. I pulled it open from the outside and had a look. The latch had 5 redback spiders on it, all in the space my fingers would have slotted into. That freaked me out. I know one couldn't kill me, and probably 5 couldn't either, but they would have made me pretty sick. My wife stepped on a snake that got into the house, and that freaked us both out, but it was just a tree snake. They're harmless, he was probably more freaked out than us. Had a magpie swoop me once in Adelaide during nesting season. That was scarier than the spiders. Felt him brush the back of my head as he flew past, and they have bloody sharp beaks. 2 for me. Walking through scrubland at the height of summer in flip-flops. I wasn't paying attention and almost tread on a tiger snake. Never ran so fast in my life. When I was 7 I heard what I thought was a Tasmanian devil outside my window. Turns out the blood-curdling sounds from depths of hell were actually 2 possums mating. Actual scariest. Hitting a wombat while driving. Could have seriously fucked up the car, although fortunately for me, my passengers in the car I hit it at 20 kilometers per hour after slamming the brakes. This still wasn't fortunate for clump of fuzz, which became a pile of blood and muscle and bones and skin on the road. Funniest. 2005, me and then GF are camping. I'm sound asleep. There's a commotion that almost wakes me up. I'm in a deep daze. A wombat has forced its way into our tent, and my ex, who was much more awake than me at this point, is kicking the heavy fuzzball to try to extricate it from the tent. She's strong, but wombats are built of solid muscle and are hard to budge. Eventually it gets the point and fucks off just as I'm waking up. Life lesson? Food is to be locked in the car always. This happened to me about 6 months ago, but it still scares the entire shit and fuck out of me just thinking about it. So it's summer, the school holidays, I wake up one morning. I'm very slow to wake up because sleeping doesn't refresh me at all, so eventually after I've internalized the pain of still being alive, I slowly open my eyes and turn my head to the right. Spider the size of my fucking hand is on my mattress right next to my head. No thank the fuck out of you, sir, I'm gay. Woke me the fuck up, at least. Caught the fucker in a cup and threw it outside. Spiders legitimately plagued my dreams for a few days after that, but after a while the traumatizing experience had faded into nothing more than a fun and/or terrifying conversation starter and Reddit comment, I guess. I was poking this spider with my finger really quickly, and at one point I poked it really hard and all of a sudden all these little spiders I didn't see on its abdomen exploded everywhere. I was squirming the hell out, and I just ran into my house and started splashing water on my face non-stop. Another time a red-bellied black snake came into a shed, and I was poking it with a stick. Snakes are actually pretty fast, and it just zoomed away through all the tools and between the exit. I waited a bit and full sprinted through to the exit and closed the door and informed the owner of the shed. Not me, but one of my good Australian friends had some emus in his backyard, and he came back to the mic and said, "Fucking emus, I swear, third time I hit one with a rock this week." Me and my Canadian friend was dying after hearing this, and we lost the game because of laughing. Had a few run-ins with brown snakes, but that's always an oh shit, stand still until they leave kinda situation. They mind their own business and usually just bail if they know you're there. Sure, they're super venomous, but from their point of view, you're a massive thing that might be a predator, and they don't want to stick around to find out. The scariest wildlife encounter for me by far though was Billy. Billy was a huntsman that lived in my car's driver's side mirror. I'd see him every now and then. He'd usually crawl into the gap between the mirror and the casing whenever I opened the door or just hang out on the mirror itself until I started the car and the vibrations spooked him back into the mirror casing. He was chill, never really bothered me, ate the previous tenants, smaller, less friendly spiders, and I'd like to think we were becoming fast friends. At the time I was working long hours at a nightclub and would head home at like 6 a.m., usually dead on my feet. The drive home was always a blur. This particular morning I was in full routine mode: get in the car, roll a cigarette, put down the window, light it, start the car, head home. While I was leaving the almost empty car park, Billy made his move. Billy climbed across from the mirror, through the open window and onto my dashboard before I even knew he was there. By the time I saw him, he was crawling onto my steering wheel and breaking every boundary we had set in our friendship. The mirror was his space, the car itself was mine. My knee-jerk sleep-deprived response was to jerk the wheel to get him off, and with my attention completely on Billy I didn't see the one other person in the car park who was walking to their car. When jerking the wheel didn't move him, I flicked Billy off the wheel and straight back out the window. Did I hit the other person? No, I missed him by about 5 meters, but the scary parts here were that my gut reaction was to jerk the wheel, which is so ridiculously stupid, and that I didn't see the other person because I was distracted. I could have hit them. I got lucky, and it was a bit of a wake-up call for me about driving tired. I don't know the full story here from Billy's perspective, but at the time it looked like he was pushed to his breaking point. In the moment I thought it was jealousy of how much space I had in the car compared to his little home in the mirror casing, but looking back on it, there are a lot of reasons he might have wanted to come in. He might have been cold or curious or just wanting to come say hi. He was a chill spider and really easy to get along with. I should have given him the benefit of the doubt. I regret my rash decisions because now I'll never know. I never saw Billy again after that morning, but I hope he's found another car to live in with someone who treats him right. The time I pulled my hand out of a puddle to find a centipede attached to it. Edit. The cry of a curlew is fucking scary in the middle of the night. Like a baby crying. I'd say that time I took off my gum boot that I had been wearing without socks and a redback spider crawls right out of it. I'm not even sure how I managed to not get bitten that whole time my bare naked foot was sharing a space with it in close quarters. I had a friend over and ran into my room to grab my iPad. I walk out of my room and I see my kitten beating the head of an angry tiger snake. Cut off its head, buried it, and saved my cat. But my cat disappeared months later. The snakes must have snatched him. Evil. Not Australian, but at 18 I was working in the outback. We had been fighting bushfires for the day, and I was driving back to our homestead for the night on my own in one of the big trucks. It was about 50k drive and was pitch black. Out of nowhere came a group of around 30 bush pigs. I hit maybe 15 of them and got 2 punctures. Changing 2 tires on a truck on your own in the middle of the outback at night was a pretty scary experience, I have to say. I was swimming at the beach and was heading out on my boogie board to catch a wave. The waves were huge and the water was crystal clear. I was diving under the waves that were breaking when all of a sudden, as the next wave rose in front of me, I saw it. The biggest fucking jellyfish I've ever seen in my goddamn life. It was inside the wave, right in front of me, and I was being drawn in. I froze for a sec and then just turned around and paddled like a fucking maniac. I went over the wave but just kept paddling. Made it to shore and I was done for the day. Driving home in the territory at night, saw a snake stretched across the road. Like, across the road. 4 meters long, maybe more, and the shoulder was too muddy to get around it. I got out, took the flag off my car, mining vehicle, had a 2 meters fiberglass pole for a safety flag, and tried to poke this thing to make it move. No reaction. Actually tried to physically shove it off with the pole, but couldn't get purchase. It hadn't moved, so I figured it was either dead or maybe asleep, so I went to the non-bitey end, thinking I could tug it off the road. The second I touched its tail, the head rears up a good meter off the ground. I stumbled back a couple of steps, and this thing just stays like that, this grapefruit-sized head swaying a bit. I circle round to the car and climb in, and the thing just unhurriedly slithers into the bush. Touching that snake could have been the last thing I ever did. That thing was easily big enough to wrap me up. Probably the time I had a giant huntsman jump on me while in bed. Austrian here, a baby cow once hit me. We'd just built a new house, and all the construction from the new estate had removed large amounts of bushland and so disturbed its inhabitants. Baby Dujite got inside, and my mum was the only one home, so she trapped it with a bucket and her 5L WOG olive oil can on top. Came home with dad expecting a fucking python the way she'd been carrying on, but it was only little. Apparently they're more dangerous because they can't control the venom. Not my own story because I haven't had much encounters except for fuckstick magpies swooping me and fuckstick magpie supporters annoying the shit out of me. Honestly, I think American animals are more dangerous. You have bears, wolves, mountain lions and other crazy predators that would give you a slow, painful death. The worst we have are poisonous snakes. Fuck the animals, Oz has the Gimpy Gimpy tree. Google it. It is proof that God hates us. My family and I once came home to see a spider in the window with a span of more than 30 centimeters 12 in. Even my father and I, who are usually okay with spiders, insects, etc., were put off. My dad eventually got the courage to guide it out of the house. I read electricity meters for a few months out of university to earn some money. I would sometimes have to guide a spider out of the meter box. Honestly though, it wasn't the native animals that caused the problems, getting bitten by a wasp or two stings like hell. My friend once went up to his car to find a snake had made it his home. He and a friend somehow coaxed it out. You should still visit Australia, though. On my grandparents' farm, walking their pet sheep on his leash when he ran up the driveway towards a sheep run coming down the road. My pop came up and helped me get him before he took off, and when we were walking back, Pop was in front of me and turned around to look at me but didn't say anything. I saw a worried look flash across his face, and when we got back to the house he told me we had walked over a brown snake. I was walking the sheep and was oblivious, but Pop thought if he warned me I would city girl scream and startle the snake. I didn't leave the farmhouse for the rest of the week. Edit. Oh, and swimming in a beach pool with apparently dead blue ring octopuses as a kid. Early 80s Sydney, no care given by anyone. Pool full of kids during school holidays.